Okay, thank you, Wei, for the nice introduction. So today I'm just going to share some of our research on machine learning. The aim is to use simplest possible machine learning approach to solve practical problems. So I'm going to just present a few projects that I was fortunate enough to work with a couple of students and scientists to make use of machine learning from these different underground research laboratories to Oklahoma at the basin scale. I think everybody who works on machine learning are very familiar with this chart. So this tells how machine learning works between the input and output data for different types of science and engineering applications. A hypothesis is usually constructed. This can be linear, polynomial, logistic functions, can be Gaussian kernels or neural networks of these functions. And if a cost function is constructed that represents energy as a function of the shortest distance, for example, between the hypothesis and given output for supervised machine learning. And the iterations are basically conducted to reconstruct the hypothesis until the cost function is minimized and the hypothesis approaches the given output. Again, this flowchart is very simple, but I often remind myself about this so that I could understand how machine learning works and possibly make the best use of that. Domain scientists like us usually work at the two ends of machine learning, while computer scientists develop more comprehensive architectures for machine learning, from simplest machine learning that can be reduced to regression to more complex deep learning, such as recurrent neural network for processing sequential data and convolutional neural network for processing image data. I'm trained as a American modeler. I actually developed my own code from scratch. So I often like to compare anything with numerical modeling. So by comparing machine learning and numerical modeling, we actually find a lot of similarities. This including how we construct hypotheses with linear interpolation, higher order interpolation with network of, of these functions which cannot be not just linear, but any types of functions in a neural network. And then cost function can be related to the total potential energy. And then there's a way to constrain the boundaries or the conditions as regularization. And in addition, if cost functions is minimized through this kind of iteration with algorithms such as gradient descendant, which is very similar to the iterations such as Newton-Raph's iteration that solves nonlinear problem. So by understanding the very basic components of machine learning, I think it's very useful to understand and make use of machine learning in terms of how we should construct what kind of machine learning structure we want to use, and further to develop machine learning codes and approaches to solve possibly physics with or without solving the physics. So I got drawn into machine learning with thought. I did not know what machine learning is about until I took several courses in machine learning in 2019. What most interesting is that I was finally able to generate a photo, an image like this here, with one of my favorite cartoon characters, with my favorite painting style, Monet style. So it's Totoro in Monet style. It was generated by using neural style transfer, a model that can approximate a content and style figure by giving two inputs and generates a new art form. So I was very excited to have this generation. This is purely for fun. But then, inspired by this, I was thinking if mesh is a painting style and rock blocks are contents, then by using an image of a fractured rock and, and using numerical grids, then I was able to generate a mesh like this. And all the process is actually very quick and automatic, efficient, and already being optimized. I mean, many people probably think this is very simple, but for some people like me who has to spend a year or longer to develop a working mesh, I think this is actually fantastic. So this got me into machine learning. Then the question to make machine learning to be um, use is to understand. So it works with data without explicitly solving the physics. It can predict results for science, art, finance, politics, and any fields that have a collection of data. It can also generate languages, art, and other forms. And this field is fascinating, evolving very fast. So later part of this talk could already be given by machine learning by its capability to predict and generate. What's important about machine learning? Several questions to ask before we really move into any applications. If there is a lack of data, can machine learning perform like numerical models? If there is a sufficient to overly sufficient data in any forms, including digital, visual, sound, and seismic, can machine learning simplify the processes of processing and analyzing the data, as well as to make predictions? And then can we use the simplest machine learning model with the least amount of data to make predictions? And how would we choose those models? And in addition, can machine learning be used for assisting and guiding to physical monitoring and sensing in the field from meters to kilometers and from microseconds to years? The first three questions are often encountered. We either suffer from lack of data or we have an overwhelming amount of data in those different laboratories from your lab to the underground research lab, and determines why machine learning can be practical. And the last question is perhaps the future. It's the digital twins. So in this talk, I will cover 4 different projects that I collaborate with different interns in the summer with also with collaboration with geologists, geophysicists, field experimentalists. And so I'm going to talk about how we make use of machine learning to recognize multi-scale features and how we use that to predict, for example, injection-induced fault slip or MEQ, known as or micro earthquakes due to hydraulic stimulation, and last, the basin scale prediction when there is a massive amount of data for prediction of seismicity in time and space in Oklahoma. Okay, so the first one was the project done by undergrad student working with us in collaboration with Martin Ziegler, a field geologist from Switzerland. So here is I want to start with this very comprehensive figure. It's the unwrapped optical borehole wall image from this progressive failure experiments in Monterey. Photo was taken by Martin Ziegler. We see that there are many fractures, which most of them are invisible almost. And what's more is there are also another layer of structures. There's this kind of clustered borehole breakouts or other textures like scaly clay. So if we zoom in to recognize one or few fractures, I think that would have been challenging using a already well-positioned, well-developed machine learning. But then because of, and this image in the field contains different scales of features. And some of these features are very thin, invisible, and other features are breakouts, and skin clays are not these thin structures, but another type of topological feature. And then very experienced field geologists like Martin Ziegler have to take months to process these images because they have like tens of thousands of raw images collected from the laboratory. So the goal for this undergraduate student project is to automatically detect those geometric and textural features and their changes of factors and multi-scale features like borehole breakouts and fault textures from these Monterey images using machine learning. So I think convolutional neural network is not new. It has been well known to be powerful to analyze images, and they use pixel intensity to classify detected objects. And in the convolutional neural networks, they are convolutional layers. They're not only classifying but also segment objects within the images. There are many different algorithms. The two that I'm talking about today is UNet and MaskRCNet. I'll talk more later. So We will use UNet to segment thin fractures and complex fracture networks, and to use MAS-R CNN to segment borehole breakouts. Though both CNN models can be used for image segmentation, UNet performs better for semantic segmentation, which means for example, you have this kind of single class, and you don't have to associate each pixel with this class label. So this is very suitable for segment fractures because they're thin, and so this approach can be more accurate. And then you have other features like borehole breakouts, and those individual objects needs to be separated. So those are cluster features with those smaller. If zoom in with individual features, then because this require regional information, so instant segmentation performs better. Now, quickly show some results. We use die-score to tell the accuracy of the model. Usually, depending on types of applications we have, 70% is good and 80% is great. So for the result of using UNet to recognize individual fractures from these very small images is good. In addition to that, we will also be able to use different colors to represent apertures of the fracture. You can see that blue. Sorry, the image may not be the most clear. The blue represents the thinner fractures, and yellow corresponds to this wider, and gray in between. And why this is important, because we often, aperture distribution along with the fracture itself is important for calculating spatially variable permeability and permeability changes of the thin fractures. So we say this identification accuracy is acceptable for the thin structures of fractures, and also in addition we got the aperture distribution. And to segment the borehole breakouts, we use the MAS-R CNN, achieving a die-score almost 80%. So we see that the MAS-R CNN can accurately detect, recognize, and distinguishes clustered features from those individual fractures. And in addition, what has been achieved? So this is a very long borehole wall. We see that individual fracture being recognized using UNet accuracy is acceptable, identified by experienced field geologist, but still some kind of local features needs improvement. So what being achieved so far is using UNet and MAS-R CNN, we were able to identify these two scales of geological features with acceptable accuracy. So this lays basis for a novel machine learning pipeline for multi-scale geological feature segmentation. And future work, if anyone is interested, hopefully, is to predict the dynamic changes of these features over time. Why I think this could be a promising direction, because people talk about induced seismicity with geophysical sensing, with some other types of signals. The question is, if we have a camera stored in a borehole or anywhere with sufficient images to tell structural changes during, before, and after earthquake, can we get enough incremental structural textural changes that can be automatically recognized from field images by using machine learning to give early warnings about this failure and induced seismicity? Well, this question is unknown, but I think I'm very interested to dive more into this to see if this can be an alternative approach to give early warnings for induced seismicity. So now I'm moving to the second part, using machine learning to learn injection-induced single fault slip at Monterey. So it's the same place, but different type of experiment conducted at this Monterey research underground research laboratory. Here shows a very brief what this means. So there is this kind of opalinous clay, and there's a main fault go through it, intersect with clay, and then there is a fault, and there is several boreholes being instrumented to conduct different types of tests. And here is the main borehole that where we were fortunate to obtain data from by the data was obtained by geophysicist Yves Guglielmi. So in this borehole, all kinds of tests has been conducted for this specific machine learning project. So we focus on these 6 injections being conducted in one of the sets of the experiments. And this 6th injection, so we stepwise increase gradually the injection rate. So this is the data we have. And that includes beginning to let the fault being open and then gradually developing a fluid path to let the fault being open and then shear. And then the pressure and 3 components of displacement were monitored using this SimFib technology developed by Yves Guglielmi. And the data frequency is very high. So the figure itself already has been stretched horizontally. If you further stretch this, you will see that the data is a lot. It's like 500 to 1,000 samples per second. And this entire test is lasting for about 9 hours with 10 minutes of injection for each cycle, except for 20 minutes for the last cycle and 45 minutes shut-in periods. So totally 9 hours. And we use the long short-term memory to predict this sequential data to try to predict if we can capture the fault response that includes the displacement and pore pressure. So the long short-term memory is one of the recurrent model that was mentioned before. It processes sequential data. On top of this kind of conventional recurrent model, this has this complex nonlinear features of in the long short-term memory that includes this information from this cell state and forget gate, input gate, and output gate. And this basically they're kind of element-wise multiplication between each other to form the cell gate of the current state and then give information to the hidden state and giving back. At the same time, the input features are taken each time step along with this calculated hidden state from previous time step to give output each time step and then propagate to the next time step. So that's the fundamental how long short-term memory can process data that gives that can consider a history with variable length. So and the model we use is we consider injection rate and from the current and also previous steps, and also the previous pressure and displacement response. The prediction is the current pressure and the current displacement. Known that the current pressure means the current time step, but then the propagating becomes the previous one. So the input channels has 5 different channels, including this injection pressure and 3 components of displacements, and the output has these 4 channels. So we have conducted machine learning experiments to be able to prevent error propagation. Testing on the lag value means that how long a history that should matter should be considered and give reliable prediction for the future. And also the cell dimension of the long short-term memory model, the learning rate, and or the training versus validation cycles. Then based on these experiments, what we learned is that a small value of lag limits the prediction during the shut-in, and a high value of cell dimension may lead to overfitting. And a constant learning rate limits learning, so it's good to have adaptive learning. And we also try to use separate injection cycle for validation, but because it's only 6 cycles and there are some kind of pattern behavioral changes, so was not able to predict reliable results. So we basically did not use validation for this set of problem. So those experiments came up with the best performance results is the experiment 1 is that we use 600 lagging times steps, and also there's about 20 minutes lagging time history being accounted for in the current time step with 35 cells for long short-term memory, and then here is the output shift. So here shows the results of best performing, including the pressure and stress, three components of displacements. We see that the model predicts well compared with the true value of ground truth. Then we further use the cycles 1, 2, and 3 to predict cycles 4, 5, 6. Well, we see that the model accurately predicts both the rise in pore pressure during injection and also decay in the pore pressure during shut-in. But if look at the displacements, it's not really satisfactory. Especially cycles 5 and 6 shows a significant higher dilatant behavior with larger magnitudes of irreversible displacements. So one possible explanation to be from a mathematical or statistical perspective is maybe the fault is undergoing some kind of irreversible movement, which may be lagging from pore pressure evolution. So then to try to answer this, we conducted more machine learning experiments. So we used the cycles 4 and 5 to predict cycle 6. And we see that the response of the displacements has been improved. We also use cycle 3 and 4 to predict cycle 5. And it has been improved, but not too much improvement, especially there's an overestimation of the magnitudes in terms of displacements, these two components during shut-in. So these two different experiments tell us there is something being nucleated during cycle 4 and changes at cycle 5. And further, we tested using cycles 1 and 2 to predict cycle 4. We see that there is an overestimation of the peak value of the pore pressure and also the strike and normal displacement. But the predictions during the shut-in is reasonable. So if by understanding the physics, talking with what was observed in the field, understand that there was a leakage pathway along the optic direction developed after cycle 3. Therefore, so pore pressure pattern changes after cycle 4, but has not been detected in the machine learning. So that overestimation of the peak pore pressure affects the predictions in the displacements. So no, there's pore pressure changes between 3 and 4, but the displacement pattern changes between 4 and 5. So that's what we learned from the experiments. So overall, if using good amount of data, including that can predict the right type of physics, the model captures accurately the pore pressure and displacements. So we say the ability of machine learning prediction for this type of problem depends on availability of data on different types of physical processes of fault behavior. And mismatch in this machine learning prediction are not useless. They actually help us detect and characterize the pattern changes in terms of these irreversible physical processes. And we tried different cycles to predict the other cycles. It's not always more data is always better, but using the correct or the right amount of data that capture the right physical process is the key. So and Woodkarsh, the scientist who did this work, has also done very thorough work, experiments and details on this part of the work. If you're interested, I highly encourage to please read this paper. And now I'm moving to the third part of problem. We're trying to use hydraulic stimulation history to predict induced micro earthquakes at the EGS collab. This is a summer project just completed by some intern student from Stanford in collaboration with the field experimentalist Tim Nifsey. So EGS collab in comparison is a mesoscale in situ experiment focused on rock behavior and the permeability enhancement. The goal of this project is to conduct sets different sets of stimulation that includes hydraulic fracturing, hydro-shearing, and alternative stimulation to understand the basic relationship between the stress seismicity and permeability enhancement. And then they're trying to identify and quantify other parameters that impact permeability and their changes during the development of EGS. So here shows that there are the two different experiments conducted at different depth. The first experiment is conducted at about 1.5 kilometers underground in SURF, Sanford Underground Research Facilities in South Dakota. And the stimulation was successful. And this is main data that we used today. I hear some feedback somewhere, so thanks, it's muted. And the second set of experiments were conducted about 1.25 kilometers underground to try to stimulate fracture by hydro-shearing, but was not successful because of its very long-living old veins, which are tough to activate. So, our study is most focused on experiment 1. So here is a very brief introduction of experiment 1. They have these 8 sub-horizontal boreholes with 6 different boreholes being for geophysical monitoring in yellow shown here. And then they have this 1 injection borehole and 1 production borehole. And they conducted more than a dozen stimulations which are successful. And nearly 1 year of flow tests. They use the different ambient temperature and also chill water that kind of imitate a real geothermal reservoir. Also has this kind of tracer tests to have to test on different components of the system. So this experiment 1 is truly successful because they achieved adaptive control through integrated monitoring, modeling, and interpretation of the data. And these also on the modeling part, they have been successful in performing many simulations that used for helping design and forecasting the future and the current. I mean, now is the past, but at that time was the future experiments underground. So here shows that based on the MEQ data obtained from the field, a very trained geophysicist, Martin Schrammel, was able to interpret the fracture geometry from this data. A research question from us is, will you try to capture when and where do micro-earthquakes occur with hydraulic fracturing stimulations given these in situ conditions? So the data that we used for this type of study is when we use these 3 cycles from experiment 1 that were conducted in May 24, 25 in 2018. And there are 2 previous cycles were used, but because the injection rates were too low, so there were very few MEQs that can be used for making sensible predictions. So the data that were used are the flow rates and in green, and the well pressure and cumulative micro-earthquakes. And in addition, here this video shows that during different stimulation, the MEQ events in terms of where they are, and also we also have data about their the moment magnitude. So the first approach that was taken was also long short-term memory. We use a wellhead pressure and flow rate and MEQ from a previous time to try to predict MEQ in terms of their spatial range, number, and released energy. So we use this episode 3 as a training, and 4 as validation, and 5 as test. And here shows the results of the cumulative MEQ. And we see that the prediction was quite good, despite there are some kind of deviations of the validation, stimulation 4, but somehow the stimulation 5 prediction was able to achieve this kind of very high accuracy with R squared, almost 0.99. And then we also try to correlate the seismic energy to the hydraulic energy, which can represent the activated reservoir volume. So we use this kind of cumulative logarithmic seismic moment. And here is the result of this kind of seismic energy representation. Overall, the prediction was okay, except that cumulative steam on the test site there is kind of under prediction. So, and because of this, actually another set approach was taken called transformer, and the performance was significantly improved. But this is parts that I'm not showing. Hopefully, once the paper is ready, hopefully I can share more in the future. But so far, this is the results from this using long short-term memory. And in addition, we also try to predict the MEQ spatial range from the injection point. And gives a very rough idea about where the front of fracture propagates and where is the most fracture located. So we use this maximum distance and also statistically median distance to characterize these two features. So the training sets simulation has achieved very, good accuracy in terms of maximum distance. Again, the largest extent of fracture propagation, and then the median extent of the most fracture location. And here shows the range of the spatial MEQ range in the validation test sets. For the validation part, the areas within 0.3 for test site is an areas less than 1. It's still acceptable, but was further improved by using transformer. So, but what we learned from this set of machine learning is that it was actually interesting to see that what long short-term memory was able to predict MEQ in terms of their number, released energy, and spatial ranges over time. So this is the first attempt with a lot of MEQ data. What's interesting is what we're able to make use of MEQ data to try to relate to the fracture, but not without explicitly identifying the fractures. And over time, so I think this is providing a promising prediction framework to evaluate stimulation efficiency in terms of extent of fracture and also stimulation volume, and to avoid possible induced seismicity, which when it's very big in geothermal or any other related applications. And the last part I'd like to share is a basin scale work that was conducted by master students working with us in collaboration with the geophysicist in BRGM. His name is Hideo Aochi. It's a very interesting project with a headache that we can see. So here is the site we were looking at with is in Oklahoma, with a large number of faults in pink and large number of wells. And there's a long time history of seismic events, and a lot of seismic events being recorded due to wastewater injection. And the traditional model using for this analysis, for example, called ETAS, epidemic type aftershock sequence. And this model is a traditional model that they capture this background seismicity that can include tectonic induced seismicity, seismic rate, injection induced seismic rate, and aftershock effect. So this actually is a very practical model to capture this kind of large scale fields induced seismicity or earthquakes. But there are 5 parameters to be determined as shown in this equation. And the uncertainty is increased when the fault and well distributions are so important to consider, and there are a lot. So the data we used were we're trying to select a region that makes sense, and that means that there units of the regions have enough seismic events, but not too many. Enough means that they have this kind of, they form statistical feature or trends, but not too many that we cannot capture the localized implicit geophysical or structural features. So we used basically area with every 0.2 degree in this central and northwest area with 53 areas, over 250 earthquakes with magnitude over 2.3. And in this entire basin, there are 979 wells for wastewater injection. This highly porous, permeable arborical formation. And there, so from 2010 to 2018, we used the data for these 8 years. And there are a lot of data on well pressure, injection volume, reported monthly. Some are good, but some, for example, the wall pressure is not good. They're either zero or constant values. So that needs some kind of additional processing. The challenges is a lot of data, complex fault structure, and intensive injection activities. And also the seismic events shows very different spatial and temporal patterns. So to tackle these challenges, I think it's important to ask what's the most important. So we know that injection as an input fact, is a triggering effect is important. In addition to that, the formation structure, including the fault distribution, is important, and also the stress changes induced by injection is important. So for efficient prediction, can we use a simple machine learning model to make predictions by considering the most important factors? So we're trying to make use of machine learning to predict this seismic injection seismic rates at different areas in different years by implicitly considering the properties of the geological formations and the fault locations. And we're trying to establish a new effective toolset to predict the seismicity induced by fluid injection by considering the tectonic and induced seismicity as well as aftershock impacts. Again, we're trying to use a simple machine learning model. So the approach we're taking is one of the simplest machine learning model on the earth called a simple multi-layer perceptual model. So again, we thought it's important to properly consider implicitly or explicitly geological geophysical features. So input data consists of injection volume and pore pressure of each area in the past 12 months, and also we incorporate the neighboring approach that to consider the 12 months injection volume and pressure of these 4 neighbors. By doing that, so the geological formation fault locations were implicitly considered because these are the results of the response of this fault hydromechanical changes. And then also the effects of history by considering 12-month seismic rate and injection-induced seismic rate. So here is what the data looks like in northwest Oklahoma. We also have this sets of data in central part of Oklahoma. Again, using one of these, trying to use one of the simplest neural network on Earth, which we try to answer. That's the simple network really work. So we conducted sensitivity studies on input features and machine learning structures, such as with result neighboring approach, number of layers, number of neurons, and type of activation functions such as sigmoid and value using this simple neural network. So the final structure we use is only 2 hidden layers with 64 neurons per hidden layer and the sigmoid function as the activation function. So here shows the result in large version. This is the results of prediction of the induced seismic rate in space and time. Dark green is a training set, training predicted, and the green is the ground truth. I mean the lighter green. Sorry, the color is off a little bit somehow. The orange is testing predicted. So we see that in space and time, if we use neighbors, for example, this area, they have enough neighbor information, meaning that fault locations and hydromechanical responses associated with faults, when they are considered, and then they result in better predictions in terms of that induced seismic rate. But at these areas, when there is lack of neighbor information, the prediction was not so good. There's large deviation from the ground truth. So here also shows the results for and the total seismic rate. And there are some error propagated from induced seismic rate to total seismic rate because there are calculation adding aftershock effect, and the error is propagated to the total seismic rate. But overall, the mean square error was acceptable, except for this localized area. Still, this new model, I think with this simple multi-layer perceptron and neighboring approach is promising for predict basin scale in injection-induced seismicity in space and time. Indeed, I think we are probably the first of those people predict this seismic events in space and time for this region. So to conclude this talk, we use different types of CNN to segment and recognize multi-scale geological features from thin fractures to cluster borehole breakouts. We like to think that as a possible promising approach to give early warnings about geological failure and induced seismicity if obtaining of images and CNN processing of images are fast and robust enough. And then we use long short-term memory to predict injection-induced seismicity and also MEQ from hydraulic stimulation, two types of problems in two different locations of underground research laboratories. We learned that with good data and architecture, long short-term memory can make good predictions on time-elapsed coupled processes. But in addition, what we learned is that mismatch in machine learning prediction can help detect and characterize pattern changes. And it's not always more data is better. And from the basin scale and machine learning work, we learned that for a massive amount of data that involves time, spatial, and temporal changes over a long period, a complicated machine learning architecture may not be the key to make reliable prediction. Capturing what are important geological and multiphysical processes in the input is the key. So I like to throw out a question for very open discussion for a field that evolves very fast. How can we make best use of machine learning? So thank you for your attention. I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Hu. This is really a lot of work you just discussed, but all related to machine learning. Now the floor is open. Anyone who has a question, please feel free to unmute and ask Dr. Hu.
Hi again, this is Sharzad. Thank you
I
so
saw
much, Mengsu. Very nice presentation. I liked it a lot. Mengsu, since you have been doing numerical simulations always and you are familiar with the physics, have you ever provided synthetic data on modeling the situation and scenarios, and then, expanding your data set plus the field data and improve the predictability?
I think that's a very good question. I think it's always a debate, how do we make the best use of modeling that could be complementary to machine learning, right? So if there's a lack of data, can we use numerical data to make up for that? So I think that's basic alternative way to look at the system we try to solve. I think the key is that what kind of prediction we want to make and what do we want to learn. For example, basin scale problem, well, it probably take a very experienced modeler like Johnny Ruquist or anyone who is super efficient among the ARMA future leader group to run this many simulations for many months to be able to have enough data, maybe populated at neighbors. But so this here, when there are a lot of data, simple machine learning process the data, make predictions. That is a very clear advantage. And we are talking about problems when there are irreversible fault changes, for example,
Yeah.
where in
Yes,
the Montreal Underground Laboratory.
exactly. Yes.
So classical model in 3D, they are very, very good. They have this kind of complex constitutive behavior that can capture irreversible changes. And but matching numerical data to field observation is a big step. We learn actually it's not always matching. So, but numerical model gives enough physical understanding is very important to support as a complementary when we're encountering mismatch for them for the fault displacement behavior. In that case, integration of modeling and data, they talk to each other could help given sensible information from machine learning. But if your model you already predict results, then why do we need machine learning? So that's another debate. One possible thing is that, okay, we could say we do this 3D modeling, making predictions, and then because model runs very, very long time, and then machine learning captures this, given enough cycles, not only 6, but 60, that captures all the irreversible time-dependent changes that machine learning can take from there. So I think that's actually possibly a very promising approach. So I would say really depends on specific problems we're trying to solve. So I think it's promising that these two different types of approaches to solve an engineering problem can meet somehow to be able to help each other.
I agree. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Mengsu, I saw the question you asked in the end, and I was really intrigued by this idea. How can machine learning be used to help field work and on-site and ongoing, for example, on the ongoing stimulation and so on. I was really inspired by the recent development of generative AI and how that could influence our work on subsurface technologies in the future. For example, I was thinking, uh, if this either the model you have trained or developed can be something like a body system, right? On your side while you are doing stimulation. Um, Probably in the near future we can have someone like a generative AI, either like in the form of a robot or like a talk bot type of thing, right? You have field data streaming into this model, and then you can and while you're doing stimulation, you can be like, so all the parameters in the field, all the pressures, the rate of pressures, and you are monitoring the microseismic event. Shall we keep going? Shall we keep stimulating, or are we close to stimulating something and we have to stop? So I think that would be really cool, right? It's almost like asking a very informative and experienced engineer that what is the decision, like the immediate real-time decision making we have to do to ensure safety. So so yeah, I think it's a very visionary question to ask, and I think it is very encouraging to imagine what the future of this subsurface technology will be like. So what is your take on this, since you're working on all these tools?
I think I have to say the field is evolving very fast. I'm not capturing a lot of things that has been recently developed. So I'm actually inspired by talking to students I work with who are actually working at the front of this field. But my understanding, there are three questions. Transformable, whether the framework we develop can be transformed into other sites. And secondly, can machine learning generate things, be generative for rock mechanics type of engineering? And three, how can machine learning do most of the work engineer can do, or is there complementary angles? The first thing is that there was a recent paper by Derek Ellsworth group. They're using EGS data and Utah Forge data to kind of making this transferable. For our type of work, I say the data we train is only limited each of the specific sites. To make this transferable, I think it's very ambitious. I would say it's uncertain to say whether this can be used for another site, because every site is different. You have different types of fault formation. You have different triggering mechanism. One possible transferability is that you have this hydraulic loading versus thermal loading for geothermal energy, for geothermal energy or petroleum engineering to geological hydrogen to nuclear waste disposal. Then this kind of structure framework may be used, but specifically what type of machine learning structure you would like to use, what type of output features and details, I think may differ. So that's part that what I'm understanding. Transferability is a big topic. I'm very uncertain. The second part is generative capabilities. The capabilities of generate depends on the capabilities of predict, I think. So far we're still at the predictive with there is a lack of data versus overly huge amount of data, then can make machine learning being predicted well enough, and then to leap into the next step, generate, so that maybe modelers like me, where I can just sit here looking at machine learning doing the work. There's a promising future, but still built on the current capabilities of predict, I think. And then the third question is, I think, coupled to second question. There are many perturbations, irreversible changes, time-dependent behaviors, or human-related induced loadings, unpredictable in any engineering settings. Then how can machine learning, how can machine learning be replacing conventional engineering work? I said it's uncertain, but I'm going to show this one slide without saying too much, is that where machine learning can be useful involved in digital twin. This is a slide I haven't shown. So
yeah, nice.
so yes, using nuclear waste as a system. These two parts talk to each other is beautiful, but one part working on its own, I think it's hard to say.
Yeah, nice. Like I'm I'm more trained in the civil engineering field. Digital twin is a very good tool, especially like for management and prediction of behavior and so on. Yeah, if in the I mean the future, if we have like a digital twin for Earth systems, it would be really cool. Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad
Yeah.
I lured out this hidden hidden slide of yours.
Well, thank you for digging that out. Yeah.
Okay, great. So anyone else who has questions? We're almost time. All right. Yeah, so if we don't have any other questions for Dr. Hu, I would like to thank you so much, Dr. Hu, for your wonderful presentation today. And yeah, I would like to adjourn our webinar today and see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mengsu.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye bye.
much.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.